Hello guys, life becomes interesting when we are surrounded with great heroes. I'm bringing to the table the biography of a great designer named Joseph Marie, aka Jude Style. He's a fashion designer with style. The fashion designer, whose father was a tailor, has followed the footsteps of Cameroonian pioneer designers such as Marie Ayissi and Martial Topolo by creating his own clothing line, which was launched in 2005. In 2006, he launched his first design, which are worn by some celebrities such as Singuila, Wayne Beckford, Romaric Koffi, and Lalco. It's a blend of Wazal, the name of a natural park in the extreme north of Cameroon, and the letter L, which stands for lion, the Cameroonian symbol. The natural park symbolizes respect, while the lion symbolizes power. Wazal Couture fashion universe expresses more of casual wear in a constant search of innovations, new styles, and creativity. In the mixture of many various colors and various prints, he adds and blends other materials such as pure cotton, denim jean, wax, leather, foil, synthetic, just to name a few. He went through a professional training in Vanessa Roux's fashion school in Paris, and he later on specialized in creating tuxedos jackets. Daring, respect, and creation. Wazal's cuts and designs are impressive and modern. Moreover, it follows the latest trends today. He has been nominated and won several fashion awards, including the Best Male Designer. This biography is coming from a well-renowned and sourceful history. The Legend of Wazal, a story by Ayissi Nga as Joseph Marie. Once upon a time, in the far north region of Cameroon, there was a small village called Wazaville and its people, the Wazadjoa. In this small kingdom filled with natural resources and traditions, its people live in harmony with the beauty of the wildlife and nature that surrounded them, the red soil that nourished them, and the spirits that protected them. It was a little paradise on earth, a real haven of peace where the gentle breeze made the trees' leaves murmur, and where the shivering waters and peaceful chirping of the birds brought a charm to the decor of its little huts made of clay, wood, and straw. The villagers were woken up every morning by crowning roasters, street vendors, and would then arrive to sell maize and cassava donuts, much appreciated by the villagers. Before going to the farm to hunt or toil, they had become accustomed to sitting together on the sidelines commonly known as Benitaria, where they tasted while talking, donuts, beans, and porridge, the most appreciated breakfast of all Cameroonians, rich or poor. Each village had its codes and rules. Legend had it that misfortune will follow anyone who will pick plums or mangoes in his neighbor's yard without permission. This misfortune will fall upon him and his family. Everyone kept his yard, and the wind that blew every night helped clean the leaves. For any visitor, the village gave the impression of being robust and hard to conquer. Its ancients walls told the story of the various and numerous battles fought and reflected an indescribable majestic force. On the walls of the temples could be seen calligraphies that covered sacred messages. However, the secret behind the beauty and strength of this kingdom that foiled the admiration and lust of all resided in the wisdom of the elders, and which made it possible to ensure the perenniality of the village. The king of the village, Wazalion, was a man of great wisdom, patience, and intelligence. Gentle in his deeds and words, he possessed formidable force and majority that compelled respect. Loved by all, he did not hesitate to go to battle to protect his land and meet the needs of his people. It was during an ambush that the good King Wazal was killed. The village had been stormed. Wazal hid his wife and son in a sacred cellar to shelter them. Then he rallied his armies to protect the village. With the help of his Wazalam armor and sword, King Wazal, accompanied by his soldiers and his faithful friend Bantu Tatoual, fought a bloody battle. The enemies came from everywhere. The swords could be heard whistling. Wazal, who felt invisible with his sword, went on to attack the enemy without even waiting for his troops. He grabbed an opponent to strangle him but did not foresee the arrival of the opponent side, who knocked him down and wounded him in the shoulder. Wazal, weakened but foaming with rage, got up and continued the battle. Bantu Tatoual, who from afar saw his wounded friend, tried to help him but was prevented by enemies who had made a barrier around him. Wazal, alone struggling with a dozen warriors, cut the heads of 5 soldiers thanks to the Wazala. Happy about the success, he did not see 2 adversaries arrive who with treachery and cowardice stabbed him, one in the back, the other in his stomach. Bantu Tatoual, after defeating his assailant with tattered clothes and bloody face, later arrived next to his friend, but the king gave up his last breath. He left behind a young son, Wazal, which stands for lion, king of the jungle. Bantu Tatoual, having escaped death, roused by his wounds and humiliations, promised to avenge the death of his friend Wazal. The news of King Wazal's death spread quickly and neighboring enemies organized themselves to attack the village again. This, however, proved futile due to the spirit of Wazal, who chose and elected the best soldiers. Certainly, he was dead, but his soul was always present. Thanks to Wazal's soul, it was hoped that they would find the strength to fight their enemies. Quickly, the Wazashans and the Wazadjoa of the village met in council to elect the new head of the village. As prophesied, the brave warrior who would bear this title will be assigned the heavy and honorable task of protecting the land of the ancestors and the secret of its treasure. The Wazalian, named after Wazal's grandmother. Wazalian was Wazal's king's wife. Faithful and always by his side, she was a wise woman, born of the Majoritator tribe, the only one in this tribe born without a daisy on her head. After her death, King Wazal, out of respect and love for his wife, wanted to pay homage to her. He decided to plant a daisy on her grave. 6 months later, surprise, he discovered a bed of sublime flowers and asked the villagers to harvest them. The flowers were mixed with the queen's blood. They created a fiber transformed into woven wire, used for the manufacture of the fabric that kings and Wazashans wear today. In tribute to Wazal King's wife reincarnated in a flower, this cloth was called Wazalan, a very precious magical fabric, which means richer, sought after and desired by all the neighboring villages. This cloth provided wisdom and protection to the wearer. To decorate it, one had to pronounce a magical word, Wazal Kajiflagilistic, that King Wazal knew, geometric and coded messages of peace. Modernity, fecundity then appeared. Wearing Wazalan fabric was not an innocuous act. Indeed, the material was also used to manufacture the costumes of the king and the tunics of the Wazashans. On the other hand, the Wazadjoa did not have access to it. The deliberations to name the future king of Wazaville were difficult. Those who knew about Wazal's style knew he was not interested in the throne, but some villagers felt that Wazal was too young to take on his role. The elders met one last time. At the end of the council of Wazatians, the balafon was played in order to reunite the whole village. Another went up upon a platform so that everyone could see and hear him speak. My sisters and brothers, the last ambush leaves the village bereaved with many losses. Our king was alone, unfortunately died during the battle, but thanks to his courage and heroism, he saved our life. We are the survivors of this fight. Let's never forget that. Our ship is now without a captain, and we cannot sail. Also, we decided to choose a successor to our good king Wazalon within our village. His son Wazal caught our attention and we chose to name him after king. However, given his young age and his inexperience, we will have to surround him with our advice and guide him in his duties. Wazal, son of the king Wazalion and grandson of Waza king, was named king of Wazaville. King Wazal loved to travel and discover other worlds. He was thoughtful and very curious. He was passionate about art and nature. On his return from each trip, he brought provision to his servants. One day, returning from an exhausting journey, he decided to go and relax in the lands of his ancestors. After a few hours of walking, coming from far away, he suddenly heard an echo. Curious, he continued to walk when suddenly it echoed again, and this time more audibly. Wazal, son of Wazalion, I have a message for you. I am your ancestor, ruler of the city of the elders. First king of Wazaville, guardian, counselor, and protector, known by your fathers as Wazadringo. The king, surprised, jumped, but the ancestor spoke to him in a calm voice. Do not be afraid. I am here to deliver a message to you from the ancestors. Wazaville is in danger. I fear nothing, and I have no lesson to listen from anyone. Wazaville is a peaceful village and I am the undisputed king. No one will disturb our tranquility. I ask you to trust and listen to me. The situation is serious. Do not be obstinate. Do not think you are invisible and ignore the advice of your ancestors. I know perfectly well the history of my ancestors. You are an imposter and I ask you now to go back to where you come from. Do as you please. Know that if you have a change of heart, you could call me in your dreams to hear the message of your ancestors. Wazal did not have time to answer. The voice had evaporated. Somewhat disturbed by the intruder, but still angry, he went back to the village. He did not tell anyone about the meeting and tried to quickly forget this misadventure. The king's days went on peacefully as usual, but his nights were more and more agitated. Strange dreams of occult powers, war, fire attacks on his kingdom came to haunt his sleep. To escape these nightmares, the king began staying awake but without making any link to his meeting with Wazadringo. After 10 nights of insomnia, exhausted, he went to see the elders to know the meaning of his dreams. One of the elders, who have the gift of foresight, immediately perceived Wazal's situation. He gave him one advice: call out to Wazadringo in his dreams. Wazal, furious, stubborn, and determined, decided to fend for himself because even the elders did not trust him. It took another week of him staying awake for him to listen to the elders and solicited Wazadringo. He was exhausted, irritable, his mind was confused, his entourage did not recognize him anymore. He humbly called out to Wazal. He assured him he was ready to receive the advice needed to protect his people. Then the voice of the ancestor came back the following night to tell him his teachings. I am here to teach you how to unveil and control your powers. But what powers do you speak of? Is this related to the streets of Wazal? You must protect your village as your ancestor did before and the precious Wazalian fabric you wear. But I am a traveler. I am not worthy of being a hero. You are the son of Wazalian, so you are worthy of your mission and of what is expected of you. According to the prophecy, they talked for a long time. Trust was built, and the ancestor told him the prophecy. Just before he passed away, your father Wazalian demanded not to be buried. The Wazashans respected his wish and died there so as to protect him, to keep his body in the hollow of a Maubi called Tree of Life. After a few weeks, one day when the elders came to gather under the tree, they were surprised to discover instead of the king's body, a tawny oil, similar to the color of a lion's fur, mixed with the sap of the tree. The elders met several times to reflect on the use of this oil, and on my advice, they decided to pour the oil into the river flowing along the land of your ancestors. During their deliberations, I signed a pact with them so that nobody would notice the disappearance of Wazal's head. This oil symbolizes your father's power. You have to recover it. To do that, you will have to swim in the middle of Lake Chad, one of the largest lakes in the world and whose waters are salty. You would then see a stain with this lion's color. You will drive in the middle of this stain of oil and the magic will then operate. You will have braids in the shape of a lion's tail and a sword engraved in your upper back. It is the sword Wazala, which means respect, power and creativity. Thanks to this sword, which is handed over from father to son, you will possess the power, the strength, the courage and the speed of 1,000 lions. Let me tell you once more the story of this magic oil. Wazalian's father, your grandfather was a king, was a healer. He knew how to make mixtures of potions in order to cure his people. In order to protect his village, your grandfather made a mixture of all the herbs and oils that were in his cellar. He also wanted to multiply his strength. Before testing his potion, it had to gently simmer. He went away for some time from the cellar, but your father, who was returning from a trip, went directly to see his father in the cellar. Finding a pot boiling and curious about its contents, he tasted without thinking. Wazalian immediately began coughing and then felt uncomfortable. After a few minutes, he pulled himself together and got up. But when he looked around him, he discovered with terror the ground 2 meters from his body. He was hovering. He tried in vain to call out to his father. No sound came out of his mouth. His father, far from imagining the return of his son, but endowed with a sixth sense, inquired from a servant to verify his intuition. His son was back and was looking for him. He had indeed gone to the basement. Your grandfather was a king, remembering that he had left the pot on the fire, went immediately to the cellar. He found his son hovering in the air, 10 meters above the ground. He pushed his servant back to the back of the room. Then he pronounced a magic formula. He used 3 letters, WZL, to communicate with the ancestors. 3 minutes later, Wazalian came down off the grip and landed, turned on a bench. Wazal King entrusted him to the servant and to take him to his room. He took the time to carefully extinguish the fire and rearrange the cellar. Wazalian, in his sleep, communicated with his late mother Wazalian. She told him that his father would soon be dead and that he would be his successor. She also explained that he had to go to the top of Mount Cameroon, called Mountain of the Gods, to meet Bantu Tatoa, Bantu warrior who fought alongside the king to recover his powers and learn to control them. This will be your first mission. You too, after having recovered your father's powers, would have to return to the village, and in order to take good decisions, you will have to be in harmony with the Wazashans so as to take care of your people. Indeed, the Wazashans are the wise men of the village. Never forget it. Even if you are the king, their wisdom is incomparable. But before this first trial, I must tell you yet another secret. You have a little brother Wazal style. A brother? But I am an only son. He was conceived out of wedlock. He has always lived in Wazalville. He inherited the gift of being a designer. It is he who made all the tunics and jackets of the village, as well as the one you wear today. He has never been interested in the throne. Where is he? The mechanicators allied with the futuritors took him hostage during the last attack against Wazalville. But who are they? What are they looking for? What do they want from him? In a distant village live two tribes, the mechanicators and the futuritors. They are called this way because the armor is made using mechanical engine parts, a mixture of gladiator and terminator mechanics. One day, the mechanicators allied with the futuritors, launched an attack against the village of Wazalville because they wanted to recover the roots of the protective fabric. They used your brother's gifts to win competitors against other creators. He is held tied by chains on the wheels with electrodes on his body and on his coat. Above all, they seek to conjure futuritors' prediction. They are lost in the next attack. They want to seize the roots of the Wazaland fabric and thus have all the powers to be the head of all empires. Your second mission will be to save your brother. Wazastai has a bar head with a W on the top. The first training debuted for Wazal because Wazadringo wanted him to be ready for the final fight. He took the road for Mount Cameroon, the mountain of the gods. He had to meet Bantu Tatoa there to teach him. During his trip that lasted 3 days, he was caught in many ambushes, not to mention the natural elements that seemed to be unleashed on his way: storm, wind, thunderstorm, and tornado. He finally arrived at Bantu Tatoa's place, safe and sound. He was welcomed by his wife Marie. Bantu Tatoa had gone hunting. Wazal introduced himself to her as the young king of Wazalville. He was pleasantly surprised to know his name was familiar to her. She seemed to know the story of his ancestors, and her hospitality brought him a lot of comfort. They thus discussed for a few hours until the arrival of Bantu Tatoa, his basket loaded with the content of his hunting traps. After brief pleasantries, both men were left alone to talk, and Bantu Tatoa presented his teaching program to Wazal. Your father was a great man and my friend. We always supported each other. He was cowardly killed, so I promised to avenge him. You have inherited his powers and I am here to teach you how to master them. However, before we begin, you will have to take 3 days off It is useless to protest. This role is necessary and this indispensable to the success of your teaching. It is non-negotiable. After these 3 days, during which, assisted by my wife, you will be fed, you will sleep, and we will be attentive to your well-being. Then we will hit the road at sunrise. Once the rooster has crowed 3 times, we will walk to the top of Mount Cameroon. This will be an opportunity for us to get to know each other better. The Mountain of Gods is a place where, thanks to the cosmic energy, but also to a great concentration, one can easily communicate with the gods. You have an asset in you. You have a positive spirit and you have a gift that you must put to the service of good. After the 3 days entirely meant for his comfort, Wazal was serene and happy. As expected, at the dawn of the 4th day, they hit the road to begin their ascent to the mountain of the gods. They had to go through several stages, during which Bantu Tatua began his teaching. To eat, they had to hunt. Wazal was a good hunter, but Bantu Tatua's technique was new to him. They had to build traps. With the help of a machete, they made their way through, cutting grass and trees. Wazal had to learn to hold the machete perfectly, already imagining future adversaries who would take advantage of a single flaw to disarm him. Hidden, in order to hunt the animal, he learned to use arrows. His first attempts were futile. Wazal was upset. His reputation as an excellent hunter was on the line. Bantu Tatua, knowing the youthfulness and ardor of his disciple, suggested he calm down, to breathe and to concentrate. His advice bore him fruit. Wazal aimed into the heart of a wild dog. A flash of satisfaction could be read in his eyes when Bantu Tatua congratulated him. They cut the animal together, put some in their bag and buried the rest so that the meat did not spoil and to have some put aside. Once at their camp, they made a fire to cook the grease and to recover some strength. After a few days of intensive training, they finally arrived at the Mountain of the Gods, a sumptuous place, a place of gathering for all the benevolent spirits. Wazal remained speechless in front of so much magnificence. Accompanied by Bantu Tatua, he climbed a hill where the Alliance monument stood. He had to close his eyes and concentrate in order to get in touch with the spirits and thoughts to perceive the secret for success. This was a much more difficult ordeal than hunting. After a long time of vain concentration, he was already discouraged. Bantu Tatua asked him to be patient. He advised him to think of his family's history, accompany his thoughts with deep breaths. The exercise lasted a long time. Suddenly Wazal went into a trance and screamed. He saw in his dreams the way to use his sword was a lamb engraved in his back. It was then revealed to him how to seize his sword, use it and fight the enemy in the manner of the old. After a few hours, his body began to shake. Bantu Tatua took the oil harvested from the Malbi to embalm and massage his body. Wazal was exhausted, but the training was not finished. He had to go down to the arena in order to put into practice the techniques perceived in his dreams. In the arena, Bantu Tatua attacked him by surprise. Wazal was pushed and landed on the top of a tree. Angry, he tried to fight back in vain. The surprise effect had disarmed him. Bantu Tatua used this opportunity to teach him the arts of sham in order to thwart the peaceful and cowardice of the enemy. At sunset, Bantu Tatua ended the training. They took the road to return to the camp. They were restored with parts of the meat reserved to regain strength. The following days, the exercises focused on learning, balance, and flying in the air to control the occult powers used by his opponent. Through patience and courage, and thanks to Bantu Tatua's wise counsel, and remarkable teachings, Wazal learned the strategy, the techniques, and the speed necessary to be worthy of his mission as the village chief and credible to the elders. Back to the village, he introduced himself to the Wazaltians, who immediately felt the profound change of their king. He had matured. He was ready to defend the village against enemies and avenge his father Wazalion. Wazal decided to create a powerful army that he named Mountain of the Gods, in the image of their tall and sturdy soldiers. Inspired by the tradition of their ancestors, he taught everyone Wazalango. It was an old and coded language. One just had to add the word Wazal before a sentence or a word. This language made it possible to spot spies. He worked hard, listened, and was not distracted by anyone except for this young woman who entered the palace with her mother. The maid who did the household of the late king Wazalion, called Elian. She often came to help his mother. Wazal had feelings for her, but dared not tell her or even admit it. One day, when he was going around his kingdom, he heard the screams of a girl and the voices of several men. He rushed to the palace and opened the room where the cries came. He saw two men around the young maid. "Who are you? What do you want from her? Why do you care, young man? We have orders to capture her." The girl, quick and fast as lightning, taking advantage of Wazal's presence, kicked the first man, but the second rushed on her and seized the opportunity to fix a chip on her soldier. She controlled them without even the help of the king. In a quick move, the trick was played. Immediately after, she confronted Wazal. "Two men tried to kidnap me, and you dialogue with them instead of helping me. Know that I am not afraid of anyone or anything. I am called rebel. You are right. I apologize to you, but who taught you how to fight? I like your way of fighting, but what were you doing in the room alone without your mother? When my mother is not here, I replace her, and the men do not know them." The king called the guards to search for the two men to have them locked up, but they were already far away, and the guards came back empty-handed. The spies immediately hit the road to the tribe of the mechanicators to give feedback of their mission. The mechanicators and the futurators were eagerly waiting for them and hoping for good news. The spies, humiliated and ashamed of their defeat by a woman, told a somewhat transformed story. They could not capture Elian because the young king had emerged and prevented them. After a long and hard fight, they had to flee, but not without having installed the ship on her. The mechanicators, furious at this defeat, burned their ears and spoke with the futurators to build a new plan. The daily routine of the Wazajwa. Among the Wazajwa, there were some soldiers of the Wazal king. They spent a lot of their free time cleaning ruby. They were sturdy men. They liked sports that appealed to physical strength as a jersey. They wore tunics to play ruby and also to please women. They had created a unique and a very particular game technique. The king was very pleased to watch them play. Perched on this platform with some Wazashan, it was also an opportunity for him to choose the best soldiers. Some Wazashans liked to farm, fish, and hunt. Here goes the story of Wazal, Joseph Marie Nga. We have some few characters and symbols. The Wazadringo, the ancestor. Wazaking, father of Wazalion. Wazalion, son of Wazaking and father of Wazal and Wazastai. Wazal, son of King Wazalion. Wazashan, the elders. Wazastai, Wazal's half-brother. Wazalion, nay, Wazal's wife. Wazalam, Wazal's sword. Wazalian, wife of Wazaking and mother of Wazalion, protective and magical fabric. Mechanicators, neighboring tribe men with mixtures and gladiators and terminator mechanics. Futuritator, neighboring tribe villains. Majoritator, half woman, half flower, inspired by a daisy flower. Tall Rêve Élysée, a mix of Eiffel Tower and Champs-Élysées. Wazal Flagellistic, magic word to make geometric drawing appear. Marie, Bantu tattoo's wife. Bantu tattoo, Bantu warrior and a friend of Wazalion. We all have heard the hot case story behind our great designer, aka Juju the Style, which takes us into spirituality, power, courage, strength, and hard work. You can now follow him on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and also subscribe on his YouTube channel to purchase the designs which are on the market.